If you see me out walking, I promise you I am wearing Kurus. These
Hi guys, happy Monday. Sorry I'm a little late. I was recombobulating my quilts back here and one kept falling. Ha! So, oh my gosh, it feels like I blinked and the last few days went by crazy fast. Thanks, Druid. Um, so it feels like I was just here, but also it feels like I've been gone for like a month. Um, Thanksgiving here in the US. I hope yours was very good if you celebrate. I hope all of our friends outside the US just had a wonderful weekend. I am pleased to report by, hey Kate, December surprised you. Oh, by the way, Kate, I got something in the mail today. It was a bit of a surprise. Thank you, thank you. I haven't, I looked through quickly before I started the stream, but thank you. You are very sweet. I love a surprise. That's a better surprise than December being upon you and being like, nah. But I am pleased to report that my Thanksgiving was very low key, which is exactly what I was looking for. I probably did a little bit more cooking and dishes washing than I really wanted to, but you know, that's adulting for Thanksgiving, right? Yeah, what else? I went to one of my favorite quilt stores in Gordonsville, Virginia, which, if you're a Civil War buff, you probably know where Gordonsville is. It's right on the, it was right on the railroad line, and it is in Virginia, kind of right between, I guess, Richmond and Charlottesville. So it's kind of just there. It's kind of rural there. Though once upon a time it was important in the whole scheme of, you know, the southern byways. But anyway, it's a cute little town full of historic buildings and things. And there's a quilt shop that opened there. I'm trying to think when she opened. I want to say she's been open for maybe 4 years or so. I'm pretty sure she opened during the pandemic, which is kind of crazy. I don't think it was before. I'm kind of blanking, but yeah, I don't think it was before. But anyway, she's got this beautiful space, and it's like, I think it's like an old house, not historic or anything, but it's kind of got all these little rooms in it, and just piles of beautiful quilts, lots of vintage, a number of antique. If you like feed sacks, oh my god, she's got this whole like shelving unit just stacked with them. And I bought a few little things for some Christmas gifts, and I bought one piece of fabric that you're gonna get to see. So yeah, and it was just a fun little trip. My husband and father-in-law, we drove out there, and I went to the shop, and they went to the brewing company. So it was a good little trip on Friday. So beyond that, I hope you guys all had a good holiday. I hope it was relaxing. I know it's sometimes hard, you know, around the holidays, especially if you're a person who ends up having to host, or who is like the responsible adult in the room that makes sure everyone gets fed. I feel like women and moms take up the, you know, the lion's share of that work. So anyway, a couple weeks ago, I showed you one of my, you know, I love hors d'oeuvres and snacky things. And I showed you guys my goldfish cracker marshmallow treats, which nobody excitedly exclaimed. So I think you probably all were like, gross, Stephanie. Why would you show us that? I do have another recipe to show you. This one is sure to be a crowd pleaser. They, I saw them online. They're called Cheese Dudes, and they're apparently a cheese cracker. Looks more like a shortbread cookie, and that's honestly, it's kind of a shortbread cookie, without the sugar. So it's got an obscene amount of grated cheese, not the stuff that's pre-grated. You got to grate your own. And you mix that with like flour and some cayenne pepper. And I'm trying to think, like, I think there's salt, a little bit of salt. And you kind of whip that all up, and then you pour melted butter on it. A lot of melted butter. And you sort of, like it starts to turn into like a dough. And you knead it all together. And then here's the thing you put in there that is the secret ingredient: Rice Krispies. So I did buy a box of Rice Krispies. We'll probably make Rice Krispies treats out of the rest of them because I have marshmallows left over too. But anyway, like, it keeps them crunchy. And the instructions say to like roll them into balls and press them down with a fork. And I'm like, screw that. I rolled them up into like a cookie dough tube type shape, threw them in the refrigerator. They get cold and solid because of the cheese and the butter. And all you have to do is just take like a big kitchen knife and you kind of have to rotate it to get a nice clean cut. But you get these nice clean thin little cuts. You throw them in the oven like 300 degrees for about 25 minutes, depending on your oven. You can do up to half an hour. You want to take them out when they're just starting to get brown. Oh, sesame seeds. Also put sesame seeds in them. Oh my gosh, they're so good. And I'm like, these really have potential. I feel like, like a piece of ham or prosciutto with a little dab of like fancy mustard. Yeah, I think it's a good charcuterie plate deal, and it's super. They're super easy, honestly. And my husband was like, "Oh, they're good." I'm like, "What? Don't you love cheese? Like, who doesn't love something like this?" If you've ever had a cheese twist, this is kind of like that. Anyway, I just had to show off. I was very pleased with those. If you want the recipe, let me know. They're pretty easy to find. All right. So what are we doing today? Well, this weekend I started thinking about cheater prints, and specifically because I bought a little piece of cheater fabric when I was at the Weaver Street shops, which is the quilt shop. Quilt and gift shop. She's got lots of very cool gifty antiques and gifty things. And I started thinking about cheater prints, and I was like, I personally was surprised by some of the info I've learned about cheater prints along the way. So I thought I would share that because I know I've mentioned it before. I've showed a couple of pieces that I have, but we haven't really like dived into cheater prints. Now, I know there's some information in Barbara Brackman's Clues in the Calico. I did not pull that out. I really just went online. And one of the places I stopped is Barbara Brackman's Material Culture blog post. So she references her own Clues in the Calico. And then I also found there's a research paper in Uncovering's American Quilt Study Group's journal that was written back in 2011. And I'm going to read a couple of excerpts for you that are kind of interesting. And then here's something I found out, and I cannot see it. I cannot find it yet, but I'm going to throw it out there to you guys, some of you eagle eyes out there. And I don't know if Robin's here today. She hasn't said hi, so I suspect not, unless she's lurking and doing housework. She's always got those eagle eyes. But in the Dear Jane quilt, if you guys knew the Dear Jane, if you've sort of been a quilter or in quilt history, you've heard of the Dear Jane quilt. It is this just really famous quilt that everybody, I think I read somewhere that reproductions, there's been lots of reproductions of Dear Jane made, and some of them are just like drop dead gorgeous. In fact, one of our quilt nerds has made one, and a long time ago shared pictures with me. I believe she made it with a friend, so they kind of split the blocks between them and each made two of each one that they made. And then they kind of did the swapsy, and they ended up with two quilts. And it was amazing. She is an incredible quilter. So, big props to her that she finished one because it is, I think, of quilters that make these kind of reproduction quilts that are interested in this, it is like the number one unfinished project, work in progress in people's like pile of shame, because it is a very intricate quilt. And I'll show you a picture of it. But the reason why I'm going off into this tangent about the Jane Stickle quilt is because allegedly there is some cheater fabric used in the quilt. And the Bennington Museum has a few pictures. They're not super like detailed of the entire quilt. Like you can't really get in there really detailed. So I'm hoping somebody knows kind of where it is. I did some quick cursory, searching, and everything I saw was just that there's supposedly this piece of cheater print in the quilt. Um, Now this quilt is, oh gosh, let's see. Let me go back to the object record. Um, what are the dates on this? 1863. So this is right there, end of the Civil War. I think when I'm guessing she finished it in 1863. But you can imagine that this was something that took her a very long time. And actually, while I'm talking about it, let me just show you. This is one of those things that presumably people work on and work on and work on and it gets done. But when you look at this thing and you just look at the intricacy, and this is a cropped view of it because these flag shapes here at the bottom are complete on the sides and the top too. So this is cropped. But somewhere in here, there's allegedly some cheater print. So I was kind of hoping that one of you guys with the eagle eyes might be able to find it. So, and there's a few pictures here that are close-ups, but, in just looking, nothing jumped out to me. And it may be that she's cut it in a way that it doesn't look like a cheater print, but historians that have done research would recognize like that portion of it. So it could be that too. So anyway, just a little project for those of you that like to look at quilt blocks and find things. So I'm going to throw the link to this in the chat because I want you to be able to find it. Okay, so there's that. So the point here is 1863, cheater prints were a thing. Now, from what I've learned, they've not always been called cheater prints. Sometimes, or apparently, historically, they were called patchwork prints. It's a print of patchwork. So first of all, let us look at my collection. I don't have a huge amount, but I had enough that I thought it'd be fun to pull out and actually look at them. So none of them are ironed. They've all been folded up, and I'm just like, oh man, should probably press these out, make them look nicer. Oops. Here we go. Okay. So this is the first one, and I'm positive I've showed you guys this before. But what you are seeing here at the top is the antique. So this was obviously late 1800s because it looks like a crazy quilt. And we know crazy quilts were made, they kind of reached their pinnacle in about 1883, 1885. I feel like more often than not, if you can get a date on a crazy quilt, and I have several that are dated, it's always 1883. So even though they were made definitely from like maybe even the 1870s, maybe there have been some, but they like the pinnacle 1880s, and people made them into the 20s. But this would have been, I'm thinking this is 1880s, 1890s. Now the one on the bottom is a modern reproduction, and I think that reproduction was probably made in the 90s. And this is one that I've got quilty friends who were, quilting and researching at that time that would know exactly. But I can't remember what I've read about it. And my piece does not have a selvage with a date. It may have been made by a company that didn't do the selvage with the collection information and the date. Surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, before the 90s, fabric might have some information. Like in the 70s, you might see like VIP, Cranston, they put their information on the selvages, but it really wasn't until, oh gosh, like the 90s and the early 2000s when there were like celebrity quilt design, quilt fabric designers. If I remember correctly, Jenny Beyer was one of the first to have her own fabric line. And it was, I think, at that point where they really started kind of leaning into, these fabric line names and the little color spots and all that stuff that they put on selvages now. You didn't used to have that. So anyway, that's a long way of saying, like, I have no idea what company manufactured this or what the exact date was. But it's interesting because it is not a one-to-one reproduction. But it is definitely based on this fabric without a doubt. So you've got this little like horseshoes and crop. There's the horseshoe and crop. You've got the spider in the web. But then you'll notice like some of the other things here are not reproduced in this little, like they're sort of oriented differently, or they might be different things. You've got the fan. You've got the bird. And what's interesting is this bird is on purple, but the antique is showing brown. And we know that purples fade to brown in antique fabrics. So my question is, was this originally more of a purple color? I think it was. I think it was more purpley and it's faded to this brown color. And there's a couple other in here that, so this right here, that outer, like the faux stitches appear up here, but this has a sprig in it that this one doesn't. So it's really interesting how, the designer or whoever was responsible for doing the design layout of this, chose not to do it exactly. It's just off enough. It's just different enough that you can tell it's different. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. And the little boy, I don't have the piece of fabric. I've actually got several pieces of this. There were cut up pieces. That's sometimes how you can get antique fabric more affordably, is to find pieces of it that have been cut up and used for other things, and then like taken apart. You can get cheaper. I mean, they're weird cuts. So that's kind of what I did. I got a nice piece, multiple pieces that had probably been like curtain balances or something like that. So I wonder if it's copyrighted. Kate, do you mean the newer one? Because the one in the 1800s, it doesn't matter if it's copyrighted. The copyright laws were different back then, and nothing is still standing from the 1800s. So, but this one should have been copyrighted if it was made in the 90s. So, okay. This one, I'm ashamed to say I forgot that I had this one until I opened up my box of things. But this one is like a mishmash of like these tall kind of, I mean, they switched because it's in a museum. Do you mean like on the Jane Stickle quilt? Because I don't know. I'm not sure what the cheater print is, or the Jane Stickle quilt in general. So I don't think Bennington, I think, copyrights the photos of the quilt, definitely. And I think that, and I may be digressing a little bit here, but typically when a museum owns a very famous quilt and people want to pattern it or do anything with it, or with the fabrics in it, you have to get permission. So yeah, you're right. Yes. When the museums have taken pictures, it's their pictures that are copyrighted. It's not actually the quilt itself. It's the pictures and things that they create that they put the copyright on. So yeah. So anyway, this one is just interesting. And the thing that I think is kind of fun in these is like the pattern is really wild. It's, they're blocks, these kind of kite blocks that are then like put around these diamond shapes. And I'm not going to say like I've never seen an actual quilt that does that, but I've never seen an actual quilt that does that. So there may be some, but I think sometimes these cheater prints will put together these designs that are not, they're not accurate in any way. They're Not anything that anybody would readily make because it's either difficult or just maybe not pleasing to the eye. So that's kind of what I think about this one. This is pretty. It's so busy. Like if you cut this down to actually use it in a quilt, I would think you'd kind of fussy cut it a little bit. You'd sort of cut, to make use of these things that are in the diamonds. But these kind of fabrics, you sometimes will find them on the back of quilts, and sometimes we'll look at Barbara Brackman's blog post. But sometimes they have been used in quilts, like on the front of a quilt, and they're so busy, they're kind of difficult. So it seems like smart quilters use these either as whole cloth, because I mean, what better way to get like a quote unquote patchwork quilt than to just use this whole cloth and quilt it? Or they've put it on the back, or they've cut it down so much that you might recognize it if you know the fabric, but you don't recognize that it's a cheater print, because they are like really terribly busy. Even the ones that are not copies of crazy quilts, which is a lot of what I have, a number of them that I have. What I was going to say is, so besides Jane Stickles' quilt, 1863, that we know, that it's got some cheater fabric in it, allegedly. The very first time I encountered cheater print fabric was kind of like a log cabin-ish sort of looking design. And it was in a quilt, definitely from the 1800s. I couldn't find the picture. It's been several years ago that I took a picture. It was at a quilt turning. And I don't think the person who owns the quilt would mind if I showed it, but I couldn't find it. But I was shocked when she turned it over and somebody goes, "Oh, look at that cheater print on the back." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what? Cheater print? Like, this quilt's from the 1800s. What are you talking about?" I was gobsmacked that they made cheater prints in the 1800s. Like, I was like, why would anybody do that? Well, indeed, why would anybody do that? Because they want a shortcut. So, yeah, I was really surprised. So this is one of my favorites. And I took the picture so you could see these labels. And so this is, that's not a date. Zaza Quilting, Hamilton Quilting. Silk finish, and it is a nice sort of silky fabric, but it's cotton, and very simple. But like, this is not something that you would make if you were going to make this as a quilt. These would be cut up, so you would not take a piece of fabric and cut it in that shape and then try to piece them together. That would be insane. One thing I did notice, and I'm gonna reach out to a friend who's a conservator. My browns in this are a problem, and you could see all over. The browns have this speckly, it's almost like water's been dripped on it or something. And it's just the browns. The pink, green, and black are pristine, but these browns are weird. So we know browns are not stable. Black's also not stable, but this particular black print, ink, dye, whatever it is, was stable. So, okay, that was the end of the antiques. Now we're getting into the 20th century. This is actually a feed sack. It is still sewn together. That's why I know it's a feed sack. This one's really fun because, to me, and this is probably late feed sack. So flour and sugar sacks were used for quilt backs and clothing in the 19th century, and into the 20s and 30s. The printed feed sacks did not really become a thing until the late 30s, and I think sometimes people confuse the flour and plain white feed sacks and sugar sacks and flour sacks for feed sacks, which that was more of a commercial operation from the very late 30s, so really almost just the 40s is what you want to say, into the 50s and just the beginning of the 60s. And so this, I see, like, that pink really says late 40s, early 50s to me. I don't have a date on this. I can't remember. Somebody gave this to me, I think. And so I don't have much info on it. But what I think is really cool about this is If you got enough of these, you could split them open. And actually, probably you'd only need like 2 of them or 3 of them, depending on how many windows you have in your kitchen. But would they not make adorable like kitchen like valances, or even in a bedroom, they make really cute valances. And the feed sack printers recognize that. That's how people wanted to use these, and they even printed books about it. When I was at Weaver Street, she had some of the little pamphlets for sale. From like the 40s and 50s about like what can you make with these? You can make aprons, you can make curtains, you can make clothes, all this stuff. So anyway, this one's just really fun because I love the colors. And again, like this centerpiece, you might do. It's kind of a Dresden, and this is sort of applique-ish. But all of this out here, like nobody would do this in a real quilt. It's just too much. It's very busy. Okay, this one. So wherever I bought this from, I do not remember. It has got a receipt and everything on here. I think I might have bought it at a quilt show, like maybe Lancaster Lebanon quilt show or something. It is said to be true feed sack, and I think it is. It's got the feel. I'm getting better at feeling like the feed sack fabric. However, I also have a bunch of this from the 70s, and I used it on the back of my quilt that is now touring. So I'm not 100% sure if they are a one-to-one match in terms of this feed sack. Again, if the seller has it labeled properly. And if I got it where I think I got it, it is a seller who knows feed sacks, is like a professional feed sack person. So they would know if this is the real deal. So I gotta go find some of my 1970s that I know are from the 70s fabric and side by side them and see if it's an exact reproduction. But this just, I love this. This is just such a wonderful pattern. I remember when I was a kid, I had a friend who had a sleeping bag that was lined with this fabric, and I don't know if somebody made the sleeping bag. I don't know. All I just remember was that it was this. And I just love it so much. It's just a print that's nostalgic to me. Okay. This is another, possibly a feed sack, but I'm not 100% sure. But this is another one. I mean, look at this. These are these shapes. Maybe that's supposed to indicate quilting lines, maybe. But I don't know, and they're just doing some weird piecing that we would just not do as quilters. And if you were to make a quilt that looked like this, this would be pieced, but then probably appliqued on. This would be appliqued. These, you might fussy cut a piece of fabric to look like that, but more than likely it would be some kind of embroidered situation. So lots going on here that the cheater aspect of it is way better than what you would, the effort you'd put into it if you actually made this. Okay, so this is the one I bought this weekend. And this is a much more simple cheater print. But I thought this was just so precious. And, this, I could see a quilt made like out of this. You obviously would have, you'd have to have some half square triangle action going on here. So it's missing what, where there would need to be seam lines. But I've actually seen a quilt made like this before. But what I like about this one is it is clearly like a kitchen print. It's got these ditzy little flowers, but then these jugs, that kind of says kitchen print to me. And then all of this little fake cross stitch. It's really charming. And so this piece, I don't know if I captured it in the picture, but it has a giant hole in it. And it's like, it looks like probably a mouse nibble. And then the one end of it is hemmed, and it's hemmed like askew. So I'm wondering if it was, at one point it was meant to be a, like a pillowcase or something like that. And, either the mouse got to it or, something or another. This one's kind of wild, and I'm on the fence about whether to call this a cheater print or not, but I kind of consider it to be a cheater print. It's home deck fabric for sure. And my guess is it's probably from the 60s or early 70s. Um, it's meant to look like, just these sort of exotic looking sort of paisleys and things. Um, some of these just kind of remind me of that, like, that trim, like, the embroidered trim that was really popular in the 60s and 70s. Um, so yeah, but I have a large piece of this, and then I have a piece that's made into like a chair cushion, like just a chair pad, and it's got like a ruffle around it. So, definitely that sort of back to the land of the late 60s, and colonial and craft kind of stuff. So this is a modern one. Now we get into my moderns. And I just have a fat quarter of this. I didn't want to buy yardage because I was like, I don't know what I'll ever do with it. I have so much yardage. Um, this is Adidas Sitar, or Sitar. Sitar. She is the owner of and designer for laundry basket quilts. And I think her stuff is just beautiful. Um, I'm trying to remember if I bought this early this year or last year. Um, and I bought it from a quilt shop near the Virginia Quilt Museum. But I was like, oh, I have to have a piece of that for my collection of cheater prints. So you can see it's fabrics that were out of this line. And this line, you know, this was put together as like the hero print. If you're not familiar with, how fabric designers create lines, I've actually been to a couple lectures where I talked about this, but typically you'll have your color, your color range, your what do they call it? It's like your color lines, and then or colorways. And then you'll have like a certain number of prints of each type. So you have your tiny little prints, so like these little ditzy kind of things, maybe some stripes, some dots, some like really small stuff. And then you kind of have the mid-range things that are kind of designs, these larger patterns. And then you have the hero print, which is something like this. It's either going to be like a very large kind of design, or it's going to be something like this, or it might be a panel. So those are the different kinds of, fabrics that there are designs that they're looking for when you work with a fabric company. I have several friends who have had fabrics printed by major companies, etc. So this is by Christian Robinson for Cotton and Steel. This was just after the women that started Cotton and Steel moved over to their own enterprise, Ruby Star Society, and Cotton and Steel started picking up other designers. So Rifle Paper Company, they did a whole line, and their stuff was gorgeous. And then Christian Robinson, he came and did a bunch of really fun prints, and I have a number of the fabrics from this line. But this one I really loved because it some of this imagery is you could buy it as its own yardage, and then some of it is unique to this print. But I just really loved it. And he's an African American designer, and I think he's an illustrator. I don't think he has any any experience, like say in quilting, but he was a surface designer that they tapped to do this, and I just loved his aesthetic. It's really fun. So this one, I think this is Daisy Kingdom, and my guess is this is probably 90s or early 2000s, and or maybe even possibly later. I don't know. Daisy Kingdom, I feel like they were one of those 90s companies that they did sort of different things. I think maybe they did some kits and things. But the print on this it's not digital, but it's that later. You're getting into some like, what's the word I'm looking for? Less quality fabric. And I don't mean that, like, I really don't mean that in a bad way, but like if it's very bright and a little bit garish in a way compared to some of the others, like that reproduction of the antique crazy quilt. It's a little cartoonish. Like this piece of fabric here, I'd say, I have some crazy quilts that have sort of prints from like Asian prints, because that concept of Orientalism, the Japanification of everything, that was very popular from like the late 1800s. The Victorian era was really obsessed with this kind of stuff all the way up into the 20s. You had this idea of like kimonos and silks and all these kind of imported things. This does not look like the kind of silk printed fabric that I've seen on real crazy quilts. It's definitely an artist's rendering, right? Some of this other stuff I think is I think it's a pretty good rendering of what you actually see on a real crazy quilt, but it's clearly, I don't know what else to say. It's just got a different feel to it than say that other one, and I actually have them right here under my desk. So the antique, or this reproduction of the antique, it's just, I don't know. Let me flip back to myself. I'm not trying to be disparaging about this fabric company in any way, but there's just like I don't know, this sense of realism that this one is trying to adopt. And this one actually has the bug. It's actually a metallic. Believe it or not, it's a metallic. And these are trying to, and you could see like these are supposed to look like actual threads. Whereas this is like a very flat design. And to me, this is more cheater. This is trying to look like a real quilt versus the cheater aspect. So, and it's kind of like again, the colors and some of the aspects of it are a little bit garish. And that's not a problem really. It's just kind of what depends on what you're looking for. So anyway, I still like this a lot. It is Daisy King. Let me see if there's a date. It's just called All Over Crazy Patch, Daisy Kingdom. It's got a pattern number. I'm sure with a little bit of research I could figure out when it was made. Okay, I think I have one or two more. This one. This is Peter Pan. This is by Peter Pan. And also, I would guess this one's probably from the 90s. And there are a couple of prints in here that I think are pretty good actual reproductions. So like these kind of prints, these blue ones, those are, I think, pretty good reproductions of like 1900 and 1910s kind of fabrics. Some of this like kind of a shirting print. Now the colors, like if you held these up against like the real deal, the colors are not right. And I think that's probably where I'm getting like kind of my issues with this cheater print reproduction is it's the colors that are kind of wrong. They just look too new. But otherwise, I think that some of these, in fact, I actually have a reproduction of this in like an indigo, this actual fabric. So I guess I'm finding out that might be Peter Pan. But anyway, it's I think this one's a pretty good reproduction, even though the colors just are not right, but the fabrics are, I think, good. So I think that's the last one. Yeah, that's the last one. So let's look at Barbara Brackman's blog post, which is not super extensive, but she talks about a few things that I think are interesting. So we won't spend a whole lot of time on this because it's a website and I don't love scrolling websites. So she's got this geometrical chintz that she's highlighting here as cheater cloth. So Kachiko Mills was a mill in, I don't think they're in Massachusetts. They were in Massachusetts. I think they were in one of the other New England states. I think. I was actually talking to Jill this morning about Kachiko, and now I'm totally blanking. But they were in New England, and they were very prolific mill, very popular. I think lots of popular fabrics came from there. But this is one of the patchworks, patchwork print or printed patchwork that they did. Um, and you could see this was a whole cloth quilt. And I saw another website that had some even different stuff made out of this print. So this print must have been very popular, just like that crazy quilt, the one I started with from my collection. That was very, very popular. You'll find that a lot. So so she talks in here about the dry goods business and how they really did not use this term cheater cloth until later. Although she finds, I think, one instance. But what we're typically seeing, and this is from 1878, they talk about patchwork prints. So they're not calling it a cheater; they're just calling it a patchwork print. This, I think, is cool, where they actually did. They took the hexagons out of the cheater and put them back together as actual hexagons. I thought that one was interesting. Here it is again. I guess this is the whole thing. And then this one, where is it? Let's see. Fussy cut here to sampler. Why am I missing it? Is it this here? No. You guys are probably seeing it and I'm not. Anyway. This is awful. I mean, bless the person that made this, but this is one of those things where it just makes this quilt look so busy. To use that cheater print in there with these cute baskets, like, that's a lot. This is where she says it's another colorway. So it looks like it's very faded in here, but this is a lighter colorway of it. Here it is on the border of this. It's another one. And so she said, the best idea is the whole cloth quilt or using it as backing. That's where it makes the most sense. And here you can see it. And so she said, when I wrote Clues in the Calico in 1979, I noted several names for the style. Printed patchwork seems to be the period name from the late 19th century. I was wrong 28 years ago about the dates on the style, but that's another post another time. They seem to go back to the 18th century in Europe and earlier in the East. Geometrical chintz and faux patchwork were terms Ruth Finley used in her 1929 book, which we've read. I don't remember those terms. I mean, I guess I kind of remember faux patchwork, but geometrical chintz, I don't know. I guess I just wouldn't have thought of that as being a cheater print. I just would have thought of that as being like some of those chintz medallions, maybe. And so she goes on to say, I haven't found any period references to the name geometrical chintz. Finley's Old Patchwork Quilts and Women Who Made Them is the first publication in which I've been able to find the term faux patchwork. For cheater cloth, I was surprised to find a 1910 citation in the industry periodical America's Textile Reporter. And so she's got it highlighted here. Let's see, 24 to 27 inches wide, 9 cents a yard. And so then here's this reference to Deborah Crack's Patchwork Prints in America that I'm going to read a little bit from. So I think this is a pretty good picture of it in detail. I like that one. I think that one's pretty. And apparently Riley Blake and Penny Rose did a reproduction of it. This blog post was in 2017, so pre-pandemic. But I bet you could still find this if you search for it. So Riley Blake and Penny Rose. And I'll put this link in the chat too. See if you want to read that. Okay, so let me read a little bit from the Uncoverings article. And like I said, so this is from, and I will also give you the link to this because you can read this in detail yourself. So if for any reason that link doesn't work, it's just go to Digital Commons and then you can search for Uncoverings, which is our journal, the AQSG journal. So this was obviously written in 2011, because this is the 2011 issue of Uncoverings. And the article or the paper is called Patchwork Prints in America, 1878 to 1900. The author is Deborah Crack. It's her last name is Kraak. I've never met her, but reading her biography, I think she was a curator at the Winterthur. I think she's gone from there, or she's retired from there. But anyway, this is her abstract of this paper. So she says, textile manufacturers have produced cotton fabrics printed in imitation of patchwork since at least the late 18th century. Patchwork prints became popularly fashionable in the United States after the centennial. So some of those centennial prints, I wouldn't necessarily call them faux patchwork or cheater prints, but they have like a very scrapbooky look to them. So they flourishing between 1878 and 1900. The printed designs reflected the popularity and variety of actual patchwork patterns, including log cabin, which is the very first one I saw from, outside of the 20th century, geometric and crazy designs. This study of late 19th century American patchwork prints examines the historical development of the designs based on surviving textiles in public and private collections, as well as dated swatches produced by major New England printworks. Further data on the manufacturer's marketing strategies have been reconstructed from an examination of the business records of Lawrence and Company, a Boston-based agent for the Cochico Manufacturing Company. So you see Cochico again. They were responsible for some of this. So in referring to Cochico as a major New England printworks. These records illuminate the popularity of patchwork prints from the perspective of industry insiders. This paper focuses on the strategy of producing patchwork prints featuring figurative motifs inspired by novels, operettas, contemporary events, and children's book illustrations. Hey, Marianne. Oh my goodness, snow. Ah! I'm supposed to get, I think they were originally saying 3 inches, but I think it's been downgraded to like 1 or 2 inches. So I am not ready for snow. So, let's see. So I'll read I'm going to read a couple of little snippets from here. The production of fabrics printed in imitation of patchwork reflects a centuries-old Western European tradition of printing cloth to mimic more costly woven pattern textiles. As early as 1490, fustian fabrics were printed with designs simulating fine linen damask. Later printed fabrics imitated silk brocades and twill tapestry woven Indian shawls. The earliest known surviving examples of patchwork prints are Dutch block-printed cottons dated from about 1790 to 1805. In format, they resemble popular patchwork blocks and borders with imitation patches in an assortment of fashionable printed cotton fabrics. These early patchwork prints embodied fashion, novelty, and the popularity of patchwork, qualities that continue to characterize the later development of patchwork prints. They also demonstrated printed patchwork's importance to textile and quilt historians as a swatch book of fashionable printed cottons. For example, a late 18th century patchwork print fichu and a fichu is a kind of like a little scarfy thing from the Netherlands, incorporated the patterns of 32 stylish printed cotton dress fabrics, including ikat and an Indian-inspired chintzes in its all-over bow tie pattern. I would love to have seen that. 2 Dutch printed patchwork borders, one on a quilt and the other on a petticoat. Petticoats and quilts are just so connected. I never realized. Reproduced the sophisticated dark ground furniture prints of the 1790s. A dense arrangement of flowers and fruit in a wide stripe format. An English printed patchwork border circa 1800 featured a dog-tooth design in a yellowish tan and brown color scheme typical of the era's drab print style. Prints such as these attest that late 18th and early 19th century cotton patchwork quilts were products of affluence, not poverty. So she goes on to talk about, the printed patchwork in kind of sections of time. All of the pictures, unfortunately, are black and white. So if you want to look at them, I recommend you go to the link I gave and search for these or download it. But I wanted to, let's see. She also talks about the literary case study, the Pickwick Papers. Let's see. She talks about the Mikado. There's the theatrical part. And sorry, guys. So sometimes there's these prints kind of, had, they were trying to, grab something that was in the public consciousness. So not just the patchwork, but also kind of events and things. So this is kind of how she ends this. What's in a name? The Lawrence and Company records used various names to refer to these printed designs. The 1878 correspondence referred most often to patchwork print or simply patchwork, sometimes abbreviated PW. Other terms include patchwork style, patches, robe patchwork, P-robe, and patchwork robe. The word robe indicated a clothing fabric with a large-scale print suitable for dressing gowns and wrappers, which were informal dresses worn at home. So think about a house dress. Cochico's salesman's sample folders labeled several patchwork prints as Portsmouth robes. Boston's Jordan Marsh and Company department store's 1884 spring and summer catalog listed comforters printed patch covered for $1, $1.50, and $2. Montgomery Ward's catalog for the same season offered patchwork prints printed in imitation of patchwork for 7 cents a yard. Montgomery Ward's explanatory phrase suggests that the fabric's design might have been somewhat unfamiliar to consumers. What is the most accurate name to call these designs now? During the late 20th century, quilters used the derogatory term cheater cloth. We still do. Terms currently in use include faux patchwork and simulated patchwork. I like that, simulated patchwork. Given the trend in quilt scholarship to adopt period terminology when referring to quilting techniques or styles, patchwork print might replace these in our lexicon in much the same way that chintz applique has superseded broderie purse. I hate to tell you this, Deborah, but we're still calling it broderie purse. And corded quilting is referred to as trapunto. I kind of am going to push back on her there because corded quilting and trapunto are two different techniques. The cord is cord, trapunto is stuffed. So the term patchwork print is not only more historically correct, but it recognizes that these fabrics are not mere imitation, but examples of a distinct fabric style. The history of patchwork prints parallels the development and popularity of American patchwork quilts, but these designs are also significant to research related to late 19th century American textile design, marketing, consumer behavior, and material culture. So, please read this paper in depth if you're interested in these cheater prints or printed patchwork, because I think this is really great. So interesting. And one of the things that she mentions, Dr. Philip Sykas, and his last name is spelled Sykas. He wrote a book called The Secret Life of Textiles, and I had a little windfall, so I have purchased that as my big Christmas present because my husband won't go buy it. So that book will be coming soon. I will be wrapping it so that I can unwrap it on Christmas. And I will share with you guys. It is a pricey book. I found it for what I think is a decent price. Um, before you think that I'm rolling in the dough, it was under $100. So, but still more than I like to pay for a book. So anyway, but we're going to take a look at that because it's a notoriously difficult book to find because it is so expensive. And I don't know. I guess they, um, Marianne. No, I don't think I bought it from Abe. I'm trying to think. I think I bought it from an Amazon seller or eBay. But those are the places you'd find it. Yeah. And so it's called The Secret Life of Textiles, Dr. Philip Sykas, Sykas, if you want to go look for it. But yeah, it's one of those that, I think I found it. I think I paid like $75 for it. But you could find it like from that price to like 200, 300. I think it was published by a university. I think Manchester University Press. He's British, I believe. And, yeah, so it's been on my wish list for quite some time. So I was kind of excited. I found a good price on it and I'm like, all right, it's Christmas. Okay. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I've learned some things about cheater prints, and certainly I keep collecting them anytime I find them. And I like everything. I like any kind of cheater print. I have, and I didn't pull out the ones I have in my 1980s pile, which are the Cranston VIP ones. I consider them cheater to some degree. I think of them as more as cut and sew, because you've got these prints that are kind of mimicking like chintz, and they were meant to be cut like to make a pillow. They were similar to that laundry basket fat quarter that I have. So even those, I don't love them because I hate the colors, but I like them in my collection just because I love to look at this range from, I guess my earliest piece would probably be 1880s, all the way up till now. It's fascinating. So, all right. Do you guys want to know what our new book is? So, we've got a month left in the year, and I do want to get into Elizabeth Hake because she was heavily referenced by Mavis Fitzrandolph in the book we just finished. And I also have Avril Colby's Patchwork book. I snagged that after I got back from England. And, Avril Colby, we read Quilting, which was kind of a snooze. She talked so much about like the quilted undergarments and things of the knights of, blah. But I think just flipping through Patchwork, I haven't really read much of it, but flipping through Patchwork, I think it's a better book. It's a more interesting book. It's the kind of stuff that I think we as quilters and quilt historians will respond to a little bit more than just quilting. So I do want to get to that as well. However, there's a month left in the year, and I gotta be honest, I do love a children's book. And I think we had fun reading, what was it? The mystery of the crazy quilt. Was that what it was called that we read this summer? I want to read The Patchwork Girl of Oz. And I will say, if you're not familiar with this book, it is one of the Wizard of Oz books. L. Frank Baum wrote not just The Wizard of Oz, but a whole bunch of Oz books. And if you're only familiar with the movie, it's there are things about the land of Oz that you may not recognize. But you can also see things in the movie that, like, you can see where they got it. Like, for instance, Dorothy's shoes in the books are not ruby slippers. They're actually silver slippers. And, I did a little bit of reading a while back about what the Wizard of Oz actually symbolized the book. There's all of this theory. And I do think that L. Frank Baum may have, agreed, like said, yes, you're right, about some of this it's a commentary on society kind of thing, even though it's a children's book. So like the silver slippers and the yellow brick road were supposed to um, like reference the gold standard and the silver standard in our economy. The scarecrow was supposed to represent farmers. The Tin Man was supposed to represent industrialists. Um, all of these things. And you think about it like, yeah, in terms of the Industrial Revolution, the late Industrial Revolution or the second Industrial Revolution, steam powers the first Industrial Revolution. The next one is electricity. And so Frank Baum is writing these books. They're like late 1800s, early 1900s. Let's see. This was published in 1913. This one's 1913, but I think The Wizard of Oz was earlier. In any event, he's got these, this commentary, and you think about captains of industry and farmers being looked at as dumb. Yeah, don't have a brain. The scarecrow. Industrialists looked at as being heartless. The Tin Man. So, I don't know. It's all very convenient if it's not true, but it's interesting, to look at those things. I will also acknowledge that L. Frank Baum, in the I can't remember if it was in the 1880s, wrote some really horrible racist editorials about Native Americans. And this was something I did not realize until recently. And, this is one of those things where I'm going to have to say, hate the artist, love the art, because, it's easy to sit here and say like, oh, he was a product of his times. I still think calling for, just like the mass extermination of a people, apparently, and I have not read these, so I'm only going by a little bit of research I did. But in at least in American culture, The Wizard of Oz and all of the things around, Wicked, the second Wicked movie's coming out. It is very much entrenched in our culture and our zeitgeist. And I think, in terms of at least The Wizard of Oz, the movie, Judy Garland, Wicked, was on Broadway forever. And now it's, this movie, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. I think the whole like brand of The Wizard of Oz has been completely divorced from L. Frank Baum. The Patchwork Girl, there were two movies. One was a silent movie, which apparently was produced by L. Frank Baum in the early 1900s. And then there's this other one that I think was the 80s or 90s. We're not going to look at those. I think that Robin's not here. I don't know, Jared, if you remember, but Mary Fonz did show one of them, and I suspect it might have been the silent movie one, on an episode of Quilt Nerd. I wasn't there, so I never saw it, but everyone's like, it was horrifying. It was scary and horrifying. And I think the reason that the Patchwork Girl is so scary and horrifying is because of the imagery. The descriptions that L. Frank Baum gave in the book, I have read some of it. He describes that this okay, so you don't remember seeing it. It might have been one of the like the Saturday things she did for like her level 2 subscribers. That might have been what it was. But the description of making the Patchwork Girl, which you get into pretty early in the book, it's all very sweet, like giving her buttons for eyes and pearls for teeth and, like little gold fingernails and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, oh, and then you see the picture of her and you're like, holy crap, where did that monster come from? As you can see here, this is a not terrible picture of her, but she's horrifying. So anyway, the guy that did the illustrations for the original book, just like, oh, they're scary. They're horrifying. And some of the other imagery is, it's fantastical. That's the thing. It's, this is Oz. Some of the other imagery is a little weird, but not quite as horrifying as her. She looks like she's been in a landfill or something. But anyway, at the risk of that, I did want to read it just because it's, it's sweet and child stuff and it's patchwork. So, I thought we would get started on it. It's one of those things, the chapters are so short. It's a children's book. I just thought we would read it until we're bored with it or I finish it. So yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy it. I snagged all the pictures out of it, and there's a lot of them, so I'm just going to put it up as like a slideshow. I hope you guys don't mind that. So, without further ado, let's get into this. There she is. Ugh. Poor thing. All right. So, oh, wait a minute. Where's this music coming from? We don't want music. All right, there we go. All right. And what's interesting, I also noticed in this, in the pictures, is that the Princess Dorothy and the lion and the tiger, the lion and tiger show up. Glinda's in this, and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man are in this. So I think we'll see some things that are, and munchkins. There's a munchkin is actually the I think the prime character here besides the Patchwork Girl. So let us go. So we are reading The Patchwork Girl by L. Frank Baum. And this particular one was written in 1913. That's the first edition, and it obviously is after The Wizard of Oz and some of the other books. So, prologue. Through the kindness of Dorothy Gale of Kansas, afterward Princess Dorothy of Oz, an humble writer in the United States of America, was once appointed Royal Historian of Oz, with the privilege of writing the chronicle of that wonderful fairyland. But after making 6 books about the adventure of those interesting but queer people who live in the land of Oz, the historian learned with sorrow that by an edict of the supreme ruler, Ozma of Oz, her country would thereafter be rendered invisible to all who lived outside its borders, and that all communication with Oz would in the future be cut off. So, I guess it's his way out of writing any more books. The children who had learned to look for the books about Oz and who loved the stories about the gay and happy people inhabiting that favored country were as sorry as their historian that there would be no more books of Oz stories. They wrote many letters asking if the historian did not know of some adventures to write about that had happened before the land of Oz was shut out from the rest of the world, but he did not know of any. Finally, one of the children inquired why we couldn't hear from Princess Dorothy by wireless telegraph, which would enable her to communicate to the historian whatever happened in the far-off land of Oz without his seeing her or even knowing just where Oz is. This seemed like a good idea, so the historian rigged up a high tower in his backyard and took lessons in wireless telegraphy until he understood it, and then began to call Princess Dorothy of Oz by sending messages into the air. Now, it wasn't likely that Dorothy would be looking for wireless messages or would heed the call. But one thing the historian was sure of, and that was that the powerful sorceress Glinda would know what he was doing, and that he desired to communicate with Dorothy. For Glinda has a big book in which is recorded every event that takes place anywhere in the world, just the moment that it happens. And so, of course, the book would tell her about the wireless message. And that was the way Dorothy heard that the historian wanted to speak with her. And there was a shaggy man in the land of Oz who knew how to telegraph a wireless reply. The result was that the historian begged so hard to be told the latest news of Oz so that he could write it down for the children to read that Dorothy asked permission of Ozma, and Ozma graciously consented. That is why, after 2 long years of waiting, another Oz story is now presented to the children of America. This would not have been possible had not some clever man invented the wireless, and an equally clever child suggested the idea of reaching the mysterious land of Oz by its means. Oh boy, this slideshow is very interesting, by the way. Okay. So there are 28 chapters. And like I said, there are only a few pages each, so we will definitely we'll get through this by the end of the year. Assuming we keep reading it. I'm happy if you guys don't like this one, we could definitely jump to like the real quilting books. But like I said, You know, a little side quest into something historical and weird. Okay, so it starts off. Chapter 1, Ojo and Unk Nunky. And the names he uses are crazy. And there's one in here that I'm kind of like, I see some cleverly hidden racism there, but we'll get to it. Okay, so chapter 1, Ojo and Unk Nunky. Where's the butter, Unk Nunky? Said Ojo. Unk looked out the window and stroked his long beard. Then he turned to the Munchkin boy and shook his head. Isn't, said he. Isn't any butter? That's too bad, Unk. Where's the jam, then? Inquired Ojo, standing on a stool so that he could look through all the shelves of the cupboard. But Unk Nunky shook his head again. Gone, he said. No jam either? And no cake, no jelly, no apples, nothing but bread? All, said Unk, again stroking his beard as he gazed from the window. The little boy brought the stool and sat beside his uncle, munching the dry bread slowly and seeming in deep thought. Nothing grows in our yard but the bread tree, he mused. And there are only 2 more loaves on that tree, and they're not ripe yet. Tell me, Unc, why are we so poor? Wouldn't you love that if bread grew on a tree? Not breadfruit, but actual loaves of bread. The old munchkin turned and looked at Ojo. He had kindly eyes, but he hadn't smiled or laughed in so long that the boy had forgotten that Unk Nunky could look any other way than solemn. Any other way than solemn. Yes, I prefer the money that grows on trees. I don't even think Oz has that. And Unk never spoke any more words than he was obliged to. So his little nephew, who lived alone with him, had learned to understand a great deal from one word. Why are we so poor, Unk? Repeated the boy. Not, said the old munchkin. I think we are, declared Ojo. What have we got? House, said Unk Nunky. I know, but everyone in the land of Oz has a place to live. What else, Unk? Bread. I'm eating the last loaf that's ripe. There. I've put aside your share, Unk. It's on the table, so you can eat it when you get hungry. But when it's gone, what shall we eat, Unk? The old man shifted in his chair, but merely shook his head. Of course, said Ojo, who was obliged to talk because his uncle would not. No one starves in the land of Oz either. There is plenty for everyone, you know. Only, if it isn't just where you happen to be, you must go where it is. The aged munchkin wriggled again and stared at his small nephew as if disturbed by his argument. By tomorrow morning, the boy went on, we must go where there is something to eat, or we shall grow very hungry and become very unhappy. Where? Asked Unk. Where shall we go? I don't know, I'm sure, replied Ojo. But you must know, Unk. You must have traveled in your time because you're so old. Out of the mouths of babes. I don't remember it because ever since I could remember anything, we have lived right here in this lonesome round house with a little garden back of it and the thick woods all around. All I've ever seen of the great land of Oz, Unk dear, is that view of that mountain over at the south, where they say the hammerheads live, who won't let anybody go by them, and that mountain at the north where they say nobody lives. One, declared Unk, correcting him. Oh, yes, one family lives there, I've heard. That's the crooked magician, who is named Dr. Pipt, P-I-P-T, and his wife, Margolotte. Margolotte? 1 year you told me about them. I think it took you a whole year, Unk, to say as much as I've just said about the crooked magician and his wife. They live high up on the mountain, and the good Munchkin country, where the fruits and flowers grow, is just the other side. It's funny you and I should live here all alone in the middle of the forest, isn't it? Yes, said Unk. Then let's go away and visit the Munchkin country and its jolly, good-natured people. I'd love to get a sight of something besides woods, Unk Nunky. Too little, said Unk. Why, I'm not so little as I used to be, answered the boy earnestly. I think I can walk as far and as fast through our woods as you can, Unk. And now that nothing grows in our backyard that is good to eat, we must go where there is food. Unk Nunky made no reply for a time. Then he shut down the window and turned his chair to face the room, for the sun was sinking beyond the treetops, and it was growing cool. By and by, Ojo lighted the fire, and the logs blazed freely in the broad fireplace. The two sat in the firelight a long time. The old white-bearded munchkin and the little boy. Both were thinking. When it grew quite dark outside, Ojo said, "Eat your bread, Unc, and then we will go to bed." But Unc Nunkie did not eat the bread, neither did he go directly to bed. Long after his little nephew was sound asleep in the corner of the room, the old man sat by the fire thinking. Chapter 2. The Crooked Magician. Just at dawn next morning, Unc Nunkie laid his hand tenderly on Ojo's head and awakened him. "Come," he said. Ojo dressed. He wore blue silk stockings, blue knee pants with gold buckles, a blue ruffled waist, and a jacket of bright blue braided with gold. His shoes were blue leather and turned up at the toes, which were pointed. His hat had a peaked crown and a flat brim, and around the brim was a row of tiny golden bells that tinkled when he moved. This was the native costume of those who inhabited the Munchkin country of the Land of Oz. So Unc Nunkie's dress was much like that of his nephew. Instead of shoes, the old man wore boots with turnover tops, and his blue coat had wide cuffs of gold braid. The boy noticed that his uncle had not eaten the bread and supposed the old man had not been hungry. Ojo was hungry, though, so he divided the piece of bread upon the table and ate his half for breakfast, washing it down with fresh, cool water from the brook. Unc put the other piece of bread in his jacket pocket, after which he again said, as he walked out through the doorway, "Come." Ojo was well pleased. He was dreadfully tired of living all alone in the woods and wanted to travel and see people. For a long time, he had wished to explore the beautiful land of Oz in which they lived. When they were outside, Unc simply latched the door and started up the path. No one would disturb their little house, even if anyone came so far into the thick forest while they were gone. At the foot of the mountain that separated the country of the Munchkins from the country of the Gillikins, the path divided. One way led to the left and the other to the right, straight up the mountain. Unc Nunkie took the right-hand path, and Ojo followed without asking why. He knew it would take them to the house of the Crooked Magician, whom he had never seen, but who was their nearest neighbor. All the morning they trudged up the mountain path, and at noon Unc and Ojo sat on a fallen tree trunk and ate the last of the bread, which the old Munchkin had placed in his pocket. Then they started up again, and 2 hours later came in sight of the house of Dr. Pipt. It was a large house, round, as were all the Munchkin houses, and painted blue, which is the distinctive color of the Munchkin country of Oz. There was a pretty garden all around the house, and blue trees and blue flowers grew in abundance. And in one place were beds of blue cabbages, blue carrots, and blue lettuce, all of which were delicious to eat. I'm afraid I would not like blue carrots and blue lettuce. In fact, blue is the second most rare color in nature, by the way, violet being the most rare. In Dr. Pip's garden grew bun trees, cake trees, cream puff trees, blue buttercups, which yielded excellent blue butter, and a row of chocolate caramel plants. Oh, that sounds good. Don't you wish that, you could have a whole bakery in your backyard? Just go pick the pastries right off the trees. Paths of blue gravel divided the vegetable and flower beds, and a wider path led up to the front door. The place was in a clearing on the mountain, but a little way off was the grim forest, which completely surrounded it. Oh, that's horrifying. These pictures. Unc knocked at the door, and a chubby, pleasant-faced woman dressed all in blue opened it and greeted the visitors with a smile. "Ah," said Ojo, "you must be Dame Margolotte, the good wife of Dr. Pipt." "I am, my dear, and all strangers are welcome to my home." "May we see the famous magician, madam?" "He is very busy just now," she said, shaking her head doubtfully. "But come in and let me give you something to eat, for you must have traveled far in order to get to our lonely place." "We have," replied Ojo, as he and Unc entered the house. "We have come from a far lonelier place than this." "A lonelier place and in Munchkin country?" she exclaimed. "Then it must be somewhere in the Blue Forest." "It is, good Dame Margolotte." "Dear me," she said, looking at the man. "You must be Unc Nunkie, known as the Silent One." Then she looked at the boy. "And you must be Ojo the Unlucky," she added. "Yes," said Unc. "I never knew I was called the Unlucky," said Ojo soberly, "but it really is a good name for me." "Well," remarked the woman as she bustled around the room and set the table and brought food from the cupboard, "you were unlucky to live all alone in that dismal forest, which is much worse than the forest around here. But perhaps your luck will change now that you are away from it. If during your travels you can manage to lose that un at the beginning of your name, Unlucky, you will then become Ojo the Lucky, which will be a great improvement." "How can I lose that un, Dame Margolotte?" "I do not know, but you must keep the matter in mind, and perhaps the chance will come to you," she replied. Ojo had never eaten such a fine meal in all his life. There was a savory stew, smoking hot, and you know it was blue, a dish of blue peas, a bowl of sweet milk of a delicate blue tint, and a blue pudding with blue plums in it. When the visitors had eaten heartily of this fare, the woman said to them, "Do you wish to see Dr. Pipt on business or for pleasure?" Unc shook his head. "We are traveling," replied Ojo, "and we stopped at your house just to rest and refresh ourselves. I do not think Unc Nunkie cares very much to see the famous crooked magician, but for my part I am curious to look at such a great man." The woman seemed thoughtful. "I remember that Unc Nunkie and my husband used to be friends many years ago," she said, "so perhaps they will be glad to meet again. The magician is very busy, as I said, but if you will promise not to disturb him, you may come into his workshop and watch him prepare a wonderful charm." "Thank you," replied the boy, much pleased. "I would like to do that." She led the way to a great domed hall in the back of the house, which was the magician's workshop. There was a row of windows extending nearly around the sides of the circular room, which rendered the place very light. Oh, wouldn't that make a great quilt workshop too? And there was a back door in addition to the one leading to the front part of the house. Before the row of windows, a broad seat was built, and there were some chairs and benches in the room besides. At one end stood a great fireplace in which a blue log was blazing with a blue flame. And over the fire hung 4 kettles in a row, all bubbling and steaming at a great rate. The magician was stirring all 4 of those kettles at the same time, 2 with his hands and 2 with his feet. To the latter, wooden ladles had been strapped, for this man was so very crooked that his legs were as handy as his arms. And there was a picture of this. It just probably flashed by. Unc Nunkie came forward to greet his old friend, but not being able to shake either his hands or feet, which were all occupied in stirring, he patted the magician's bald head and asked, "What?" "Ah, it's the silent one," remarked Dr. Pipt, without looking up, "and he wants to know what I'm making. Well, when it is quite finished, this compound will be the wonderful powder of life, which no one knows how to make but myself. Whenever it is sprinkled on anything, that thing will at once come to life, no matter what it is." Oh, Marianne, is that the book? Is that this book? Let me see for a sec. I suspect it is because I'm pretty sure Gutenberg has a copy of it in there. Yep. Yep. It looks like it's the same edition. Yeah. Checking out the pictures. I know. Aren't they terrifying? Okay. So he's making the powder of life. Whenever it is sprinkled on anything, that thing will at once come to life, no matter what it is. It takes me several years to make this magic powder, but at this moment I am pleased to say it is nearly done. You see, I am making it for my good wife Margolotte, who wants to use some of it for a purpose of her own. Sit down and make yourself comfortable, Unc Nunkie, and after I finish my task I will talk to you. You must know, said Margolotte, when they were all seated together in the broad window seat, that my husband foolishly gave away all the powder of life he first made to old Mombi the witch, who used to live in the country of the Gillikins to the north of here. Mombi gave to Dr. Pipt a powder of perpetual youth in exchange for his powder of life, but she cheated him wickedly, for the powder of youth was no good and could work no magic at all. Perhaps the powder of life couldn't either, said Ojo. Yes, it is perfection, she declared. The first lot we tested on our glass cat, which not only began to live, but has lived ever since. She's somewhere in the house now. A glass cat! Exclaimed Ojo, astonished. Yes, she makes a very pleasant companion, but admires herself a little more than is considered modest. And she positively refuses to catch mice, exclaimed Margolotte. My husband made the cat some pink brains, but they proved to be too high bred and particular for a cat, so she thinks it is undignified in her to catch mice. Also, she has a pretty blood-red heart, but it is made of stone, a ruby, I think, and so it is rather hard and unfeeling. I think the next glass cat the magician makes will have neither brains nor heart, but then it will not object to catching mice and may prove of some use to us. Oh, there's Glinda. What did old Mombi the witch do with the powder of life your husband gave her? Asked the boy. She brought Jack Pumpkinhead to life, for one thing, was the reply. I suppose you've heard of Jack Pumpkinhead. He is now living near the Emerald City and is a great favorite with the Princess Ozma, who rules all the land of Oz. And I can tell you, there's Jack Pumpkinhead right there. Now, I haven't heard of him, remarked Ojo. I'm afraid I don't know much about the land of Oz. You see, I've lived all my life with Unc Nunky, the Silent One, and there is no one to tell me anything. That is one reason you are Ojo the Unlucky, said the woman in a sympathetic tone. The more one knows, the luckier he is, for knowledge is the greatest gift in life. But tell me, please, what do you intend to do with this new lot of the powder of life, which Dr. Pipt is making? He said his wife wanted it for some special purpose. So I do, she answered. I want to bring my patchwork girl to life. Oh, a patchwork girl, what is that? Ojo asked, for this seemed even more strange and unusual than a glass cat. I think I must show you my patchwork girl, said Margolotte, laughing at the boy's astonishment, for she is rather difficult to explain. And horrifying to look at. But first I will tell you that for many years I have longed for a servant to help me with the housework and to cook the meals and wash the dishes. No servant will come here because the place is so lonely and out of the way, so my clever husband, the crooked magician, proposed that I make a girl out of some sort of material, and he would make her come to life by sprinkling over her the powder of life. He would make her live by sprinkling over her the powder of life. This seemed an excellent suggestion, and at once Dr. Pipt set to work to make a new batch of his magic powder. He's been at it a long, long while, and so I have had plenty of time to make the girl. Yet that task was not so easy as you may suppose. At first, I couldn't think of what to make her of, but finally, in searching through a chest, I came across an old patchwork quilt, which my grandmother once made when she was young. What is a patchwork quilt? Said Ojo. A bed quilt made of patches of different kinds and colors of cloth, all neatly sewed together. The patches are of all shapes and sizes, so a patchwork quilt is a very pretty and gorgeous thing to look at. But not the girl that was made out of it. Sometimes it is called a crazy quilt because the patches and colors are so mixed up. Ah, interesting. So we're using this term crazy quilt in this book, 1913. Because that was not the term that they used in the late 19th century. We never have used my grandmother's many-colored patchwork quilt, handsome as it is, for we Munchkins do not care for any color other than blue, so it has been packed away in the chest for about 100 years. When I found it, I said to myself that it will do nicely for my servant girl, for when she is brought to life, she would not be proud nor haughty as the glass cat is, for such a dreadful mix of colors would discourage her from trying to be as dignified as the blue Munchkins are. All right, well, Margolotte sounds a little snooty. Is blue the only respectable color, then? Inquired Ojo. Yes, for a Munchkin. All our country is blue, you know. But in other parts of Oz, the people favor different colors. At the Emerald City, where our Princess Ozma lives, green is the popular color. But all Munchkins prefer blue to anything else, and when my housework girl is brought to life, she will find herself to be of so many unpopular colors that she'll never dare to be rebellious or impudent, as servants are sometimes liable to be when they are made the same way their mistresses are. There's some underlying classism here. Unc Nunkie nodded in approval. Good idea, he said, and this was a long speech for Unc Nunkie because it was 2 words. So I cut up the quilt, continued Margolot, and made from it a well-shaped girl, which I stuffed with cotton wadding. I will show you what a good job I did. And she went to a tall cupboard and threw open the doors. Then back she came, lugging in her arms the patchwork girl, which she set upon the bench and propped up so that the figure would not tumble over. The Patchwork Girl, Chapter 3. Ojo examined this curious contrivance with wonder. The patchwork girl was taller than he when she stood upright, and her body was plump and rounded because it had been so neatly stuffed with cotton. Margolot had first made the girl's form from the patchwork quilt, and then she had dressed it with a patchwork skirt and an apron with pockets in it, using the same gay material throughout. Upon the feet, she had sewn a pair of red leather shoes with pointed toes. All the fingers and thumbs of the girl's hands had been carefully formed and stuffed and stitched at the edges, with gold plates at the ends to serve as fingernails. She will have to work when she comes to life, said Margolot. The head of the patchwork girl was the most curious part of her. While she waited for her husband to finish making his powder of life, the woman had found ample time to complete the head as her fancy dictated, and she realized that a good servant's head must be properly constructed. The hair was of brown yarn and hung down on her neck in several neat braids. Her eyes were 2 silver suspender buttons cut from a pair of the magician's old trousers, and they were sewed on with black threads which formed the pupil of the eyes. Margolot had puzzled over the ears for some time, for these were important if the servant was to hear distinctly, but finally she had made them out of thin plates of gold and attached them in place by means of stitches through tiny holes bored in the metal. Gold is the most common metal in the land of Oz and is used for many purposes because it is soft and pliable. That's interesting to me, the fact that she's got gold fingernails and gold ears. I'm wondering if this is going to become a thing. The woman had cut a slit for the patchwork girl's mouth and sewn 2 rows of white pearls in it for teeth, using a strip of scarlet plush for a tongue. This mouth Ojo considered very artistic and lifelike, and Margolot was pleased when the boy praised it. There were almost too many patches on the face of the girl for her to be considered strictly beautiful, for one cheek was yellow and the other red, her chin blue, her forehead purple, and the center, where her nose had been formed and padded, a bright yellow. You ought to have her face all pink, suggested the boy. I suppose so, but I had no pink cloth, replied the woman. Still, I cannot see as it matters much, for I wish my patchwork girl to be useful rather than ornamental. If I get tired looking at her patched face, I can whitewash it. Has she got any brains? Asked Ojo. No, I forgot all about the brains, exclaimed the woman. I am glad you reminded me of them, for it is not too late to supply them by any means. Until she is brought to life, I can do anything I please with this girl, but I must be careful not to give her too much brains, and those she has must be such as are fitted to the station she is to occupy in life. In other words, her brains mustn't be very good. Wrong, said Unc Nunkie. No, I am sure I'm right about that, returned the woman. He means, exclaimed Ojo, that unless your servant has good brains, she won't know how to obey you properly, nor do the things you ask her to do. Well, that may be true, agreed Margolot. But on the contrary, a servant with too much brains is sure to become independent and high and mighty and feel above her work. This is a very delicate task, as I said, and I must take care to give the girl just the right quantity of the right sort of brains. I want her to know just enough, but not too much. Whew. It's kind of like AI. We wanted to know just enough, but not too much. With this, she went to another cupboard, which was filled with shelves. All the shelves were lined with blue glass bottles, neatly labeled by the magician to show what they contained. One whole shelf was marked brain furniture, and the bottles on this shelf were labeled as follows: obedience, cleverness, judgment, courage, ingenuity, amiability, learning, truth, posy, self-reliance. Let me see, said Margalotte. Of those qualities, she must have obedience, first of all. And she took down the bottle bearing the label and poured from it upon a dish several grains of the contents. Amiability is also good, and truth. She poured in the dish a quantity from each of those bottles. I think that will do, she continued, for the other qualities are not needed in a servant. Unk Nunky, who with Ojo stood beside her, touched the bottle marked cleverness. Little, said he. A little cleverness? Well, perhaps you are right, sir, said she, and was about to take down the bottle when the crooked magician suddenly called to her excitedly from the fireplace. Quick, Margalotte, come and help me. She ran to her husband's side at once and helped him lift the 4 kettles from the fire. Their contents had all boiled away, leaving at the bottom of each kettle a few grains of fine white powder. Very carefully, the magician removed the powder, placing it all together in a golden dish where he mixed it with a golden spoon. When the mixture was complete, there was scarcely a handful, all told. That, said Dr. Pipt, in a pleased and triumphant tone, is the wonderful powder of life, which I alone in the world know how to make. It has taken me nearly 6 years to prepare these precious grains of dust. 6 years. But the little heap on that dish is worth the price of a kingdom, and many a king will give all he has to possess it. When it has become cooled, I will place it in a small bottle, but meantime I must watch it carefully, lest a gust of wind blow it away or scatter it. Unk Nunky, Margalotte, and the magician all stood looking at the marvelous powder, but Ojo was more interested just then in the Patchwork Girl's brains. Thinking it both unfair and unkind to deprive her of any good qualities that were handy, the boy took down every bottle on the shelf and poured some of its contents into Margalotte's dish. No one saw him do this, for all were looking at the powder of life. But soon the woman remembered what she had been doing and came back to the cupboard. Let's see, I was about to give my girl a little cleverness, which is the doctor's substitute for intelligence, a quality he has not yet learned how to manufacture. Taking down the bottle of cleverness, she added some of the powder to the heap on the dish. Ojo became a little uneasy at this, for he had already put quite a lot of the cleverness powder in the dish, but he dared not interfere, so he comforted himself with the thought that one cannot have too much cleverness. Little stinker, all right? Well, he's doing the right thing. I mean, if you're gonna make this poor Patchwork Girl a servant, you should at least give her give her brains and stuff. Margalotte now carried the dish of brains to the bench. Ripping the seam of the patch on the girl's forehead, she placed the powder within the head and then sewed up the seam as neatly and securely as before. My girl is all ready for your powder of life, my dear, she said to her husband, but the magician replied, this powder must not be used before tomorrow morning, but I think it is now cool enough to be bottled. He selected a small gold bottle with a pepper box top so that the powder might be sprinkled on any object through the small holes. Very carefully, he placed the powder of life in the gold bottle and then locked it up in a drawer of his cabinet. At last, he said, rubbing his hands together gleefully, I have ample leisure for a good talk with my old friend Unk Nunky. So let us sit down cozily and enjoy ourselves. After stirring those 4 kettles for 6 years, I am glad to have a little rest. You will have to do most of the talking, said Ojo, for Unk is called the silent one and uses few words. I know, but that renders your uncle a most agreeable companion in gossip, declared Dr. Pipt. Most people talk too much, so it is a relief to find one who talks too little. Ojo looked at the magician with much awe and curiosity. Don't you find it very annoying to be so crooked? He asked. No, I am quite proud of my person, was the reply. I suppose I am the only crooked magician in all the world. Some others are accused of being crooked, but I am the only genuine. He was really very crooked, and Ojo wondered how he managed to do so many things with such a twisted body. When he sat down upon a crooked chair that had been made to fit him, one knee was under his chin and the other near the small of his back. Good Lord, this poor man. But he was a cheerful man, and his face bore a pleasant and agreeable expression. I am not allowed to perform magic, except for my own amusement, he told his visitors, as he lighted a pipe with a crooked stem and began to smoke. Too many people were working magic in the land of Oz, and so our lovely Princess Ozma put a stop to it. I think she was quite right. There were several wicked witches who caused a lot of trouble, but now they are all out of business, and only the great sorceress, Glinda the Good, is permitted to practice her arts, which never harm anybody. The Wizard of Oz, who used to be a humbug and knew no magic at all, has been taking lessons of Glinda, and I'm told he is getting to be a pretty good wizard, but he is merely the assistant of the great sorceress. I've the right to make a servant girl for my wife, you know, or a glass cat to catch our mice, which she refuses to do, but I am forbidden to work magic for others or to use it as a profession. Magic must be a very interesting study, said Ojo. It truly is, asserted the magician. In my time, I've performed some magical feats that were worthy the skill of Glinda. The Good. For instance, there's the powder of life, and my liquid of petrification, which is contained in that bottle on the shelf yonder, over the window. What does the liquid of petrification do? Inquired the boy. It turns everything it touches to solid marble. It's an invention of my own, and I find it very useful. Once, two of those dreadful Kalidas, with bodies like bears and heads like tigers, came here from the forest to attack us, but I sprinkled some of that liquid on them, and instantly they turned to marble. I now use them as ornamental statuary in my garden. This table looks to you like wood, and once it really was wood, but I sprinkled a few drops of the liquid petrification on it, and now it is marble. It will never break nor wear out. Fine, said Unc Nunkie, wagging his head and stroking his long gray beard. Dear me, what a chatterbox you're getting to be, Unc, remarked the magician, who was pleased with the compliment. But just then there was a scratching at the back door, and a shrill voice cried, Let me in! Hurry up, can't you? Let me in! Margolette got up and went to the door. Ask like a good cat, then, she said. Meow! There, does that suit your royal highness? Asked the voice in scornful accents. Yes, that's proper cat talk, declared the woman, and opened the door. At once a cat entered, came to the center of the room, and stopped short at the sight of strangers. Ojo and Unc Nunkie both stared at it with wide open eyes, for surely no such curious creature had ever existed before, even in the land of Oz. Chapter 4. The Glass Cat. The cat was made of glass, so clear and transparent that you could see through it as easily as through a window. In the top of its head, however, was a mass of delicate pink balls which looked like jewels, and it had a heart made of a blood-red ruby. The eyes were two large emeralds, but aside from these colors, all the rest of the animal was clear glass, and it had a spun glass tail that was really beautiful. Well, Doc pipped, do you mean to introduce us or not? Demanded the cat in a tone of annoyance. Seems to me you are forgetting your manners. Excuse me, returned the magician. This is Unc Nunkie, the descendant of the former kings of the Munchkins, before this country became a part of the land of Oz. He needs a haircut, observed the cat, washing its face. True, replied Unc with a low chuckle of amusement. But he has lived alone in the heart of the forest for many years, the magician explained. And although that is a barbarous country, there are no barbers there. Who is the dwarf? Asked the cat. That is not a dwarf, but a boy, answered the magician. You have never seen a boy before. He is now small because he is young. With more years, he will grow big and become as tall as Unc Nunkie. Oh, is that magic? The glass animal inquired. Yes, but it is nature's magic, which is more wonderful than any art known to man. For instance, my magic made you, and made you live, and it was a poor job because you are useless and a bother to me, and I can't make you grow. You will always be the same size, and the same saucy, inconsiderate glass cat with pink brains and a hard ruby heart. No one can regret more than I the fact that you made me, asserted the cat, crouching upon the floor and slowly swaying its spun glass tail from side to side. Your world is a very uninteresting place. I've wandered through your gardens and in the forest until I'm tired of it all. And when I come to the house, the conversation of your fat wife and of yourself bores me dreadfully. Oh, this cat is rude. So very rude. That is because I gave you different brains from those we ourselves possess, and much too good for a cat, returned Dr. Pipt. Can't you take 'em out, then, and replace them with pebbles so that I won't feel above my station in life? Asked the cat pleadingly. Perhaps so. I will try it after I've brought the Patchwork Girl to life, he said. The cat walked up to the bench on which the Patchwork Girl reclined and looked at her attentively. Are you going to make that dreadful thing live? She asked. The magician nodded. It is intended to be my wife's servant maid, he said. When she is alive, she will do all our work and mind the house. But you are not to order her around, Bungle, as you do us. The cat's name is Bungle. You must treat the Patchwork Girl respectfully. I won't. I couldn't respect such a bundle of scraps under any circumstances. If you don't, there will be more scraps than you will like, cried Margolotte angrily. Why don't you make her pretty to look at? Asked the cat. You made me pretty, very pretty indeed, and I love to watch my pink brains roll around when they're working and see my precious red heart beat. She went to a long mirror as she said this and stood before it, looking at herself with an air of much pride. But that poor patched thing will hate herself when she's alive, continued the cat. If I were you, I'd use her for a mop and make another servant that is prettier. You have a perverted taste, snapped Margolotte, much annoyed at this frank criticism. I think the Patchwork Girl is beautiful, considering what she's made of. Even the rainbow hasn't many colors, and you must admit that the rainbow is a pretty thing. The glass cat yawned and stretched herself upon the floor. Have your own way, she said. I'm sorry for the Patchwork Girl, that's all. Ojo and Unc Nunkie slept the night in the magician's house, and the boy was glad to stay because he was anxious to see the Patchwork Girl brought to life. The glass cat was also a wonderful creature to little Ojo, who had never seen or known anything of magic before, although he had lived in the fairyland of Oz ever since he was born. Back there in the woods, nothing unusual ever happened. Unc Nunkie, who might have been king of the Munchkins, had not his people united with all the other countries of Oz in acknowledging Ozma as their sole ruler, had retired into this forgotten forest nook with his baby nephew, and they had lived all alone there. Only that the neglected garden had failed to grow food for them, they would always have lived in the solitary blue forest. But now they had started out to mingle with other people, and the first place they came to provided so interesting that Ojo could scarcely sleep a wink all night. Margolotte was an excellent cook and gave them a fine breakfast. While they were all engaged in eating, the good woman said, This is the last meal I shall have to cook for some time, for right after breakfast, Dr. Pipt has promised to bring my new servant to life. I shall let her wash the breakfast dishes and sweep and dust the house. What a relief it will be. It will indeed relieve you of much drudgery, said the magician. By the way, Margolotte, I thought I saw you getting some brains from the cupboard while I was busy with my kettles. What qualities have you given your new servant? Only those that a humble servant requires, she answered. I do not wish her to feel above her station, as the glass cat does. That would make her discontented and unhappy, for of course she must always be a servant. Ojo was somewhat disturbed as he listened to this, and the boy began to fear he had done wrong in adding all those different qualities of brains to the lot Margolotte had prepared for the servant. But it was too late now for regret, since all the brains were securely sewed up inside the Patchwork Girl's head. He might have confessed what he had done and thus allow Margolotte and her husband to change the brains, but he was afraid of incurring their anger. He believed that Unc had seen him add the brains, and Unc had not said a word against it, but then Unc never did say anything unless it was absolutely necessary. As soon as breakfast was over, they all went into the magician's big workshop where the glass cat was lying before the mirror, and the Patchwork Girl lay limp and lifeless upon the bench. Now then, said Dr. Pipt in a brisk tone, we shall perform one of the greatest feats of magic possible to man. even in this marvelous land of Oz. In no other country could it be done at all. I think we ought to have a little music while this patchwork girl comes to life. It is pleasant to reflect that the first sounds her golden ears will hear will be delicious music. As he spoke, he went to a phonograph, which was screwed fast to a small table, and wound up the spring of the instrument and adjusted the big gold horn. The music my servant will usually hear, remarked Margolotte, will be my orders to do her work, but I see no harm in allowing her to listen to this unseen band while she wakens to her first realization of life. My orders will beat the band afterward. The phonograph was now playing a stirring march tune, and the magician unlocked his cabinet and took out the gold bottle containing the powder of life. They all bent over the bench on which the patchwork girl reclined. Unc Nunkie and Margolotte stood behind near the windows, Ojo at one side, and the magician in front where he could have freedom to sprinkle the powder. The glass cat came near, too, curious to watch the important scene. All ready? Asked Dr. Pip. All is ready, answered his wife. So the magician leaned over and shook from the bottle some grains of the wonderful powder, and they fell directly on the patchwork girl's head and arms. And that is where we will end for today. So we will start with chapter 5 on Thursday, and the patchwork girl is going to come to life. So, I hope that you guys enjoy this one. I think it's cute. You know, I've always loved the movie, The Wizard of Oz. You know, I read the book when I was probably, I don't know, 11 or 12. I think I had like a little set of the books. And I know I've read other ones other than just The Wizard of Oz, but I can't remember which ones. I can't remember the details. I know I never read this one. I think in the little treasury set of the books I got, it was like, they were little like miniatures. There was like maybe 4 of them, so it didn't include this one. Anyway. Loosely connected, right? To quilting. All right, guys. I will see you on Thursday. Tomorrow, Jill and I are back. Quilt nerding. So if you are following along with Stitch in Time, make sure you get your reading done. I have to do mine still. We will see you tomorrow night if you're hanging out with us. Otherwise, I'll see you on Thursday. I think we've got a Stitch and Glitch this week on Saturday. So lots going on this week. And yeah, I again hope that you guys here in the U.S. had a wonderful weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. And Marianne, a druid, I hope that the snow ceases or stays manageable. I hope the snow for myself stays manageable because I don't have time for that. So I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. So take care and have a wonderful start to your week. Mwah! Mwah! Bye!